This experience happened when I was 17 years old. I was particularly obsessed with motorcycles. When I had time, I would meet my friends and go off-road together. Although I was often injured, it didn't stop me from loving off-roading. One weekend, my friend asked me to go off-road with him. It had been raining for a few days, and the roads had become very muddy. I rode my motorcycle up the off-road track and headed towards a jump. I had been on this jump hundreds of times before. That day I decided to complete a jump farther than I had ever done before. As I approached the jump, I sprinted as fast as I could. A voice told me that I had to slow down. I ignored the voice and sped up. This was not the first time I had heard this voice. This voice was special to me. I was often abused by my stepmother when I was a child. Whenever I was beaten, there was always a voice comforting me. When I was in trouble, I would also hear this voice. Don't get me wrong, I'm not looking for sympathy here. This voice not only comforted me, but also warned me of impending danger. I ignored that voice. I accelerated into a sprint as I approached the jump. I suddenly felt my tires skid and I lost control of the bike. I couldn't get control of the bike before I hit the ground. I hit my head on the ground and lost consciousness. I wasn't wearing a helmet because I was confident in my skills. Now, it seems how stupid I was. My friends saw me fall and they called the emergency services. They gathered around me and watched me, and they feared I was dead. They couldn't see me move or breathe at all. Suddenly, they saw me take a deep breath and slowly open my eyes. They told me later that the whole process took about 3 minutes. I remember the moment my head fell to the ground and everything in front of me went black. Then I opened my eyes and stood up. To my shock, I saw myself lying on the ground. Then I heard that familiar voice that kept saying behind me, "Come on. We have to go." I turned around. I saw the one who had made the voice. I think it would be more appropriate to describe it as an angel. This angel looked like a 10-year-old boy, and I asked him, "Where are we going?" He said in an anxious tone, "Come on, we have to go now. The devil in the darkness is coming." Then he pointed to the distance. There was a dark spirit coming toward me, and he wanted to take me away. I had a feeling that he was sent by Satan to try to capture my soul. There was a dark cloud around him, and he was wearing a black robe, and I could not see his eyes. He represented pain and suffering. I looked at the angel floating above me, and he held out his hand for me to grasp him. The angel wore a white coat and a golden crown on his head. He began to fly upward. I looked down and saw my friend. I also saw the demon that was around my body. He looked very angry. As the angel and I flew upward, I saw the earth getting smaller and smaller. Then we went into outer space, faster and faster, until the earth disappeared. We passed so many planets, going so fast, it was like a blur. I tried to look up to see where we were traveling. It was very difficult because we were going so fast. Finally, we got there through an obstacle. It was a very dreamy place, and I felt so wonderful here. There was no heat or cold, no pain or discomfort, no hunger or thirst, no craving for anything. I had a feeling of being loved, and this place was the most perfect place you could imagine. I believe this place is heaven. The angel said, "I have to go now. There are others waiting for him." I thanked the angel for everything he had done for me. I saw 2 people to my left. They were standing on a podium. There was a book on the podium, and it was very thick. One of them looked at me and asked, Why are you here? I looked up at him. In a trembling voice I asked, Are you saying I should go down there? I felt that they were implying to me that hell was where I should go. They both laughed and explained to me. Now your time has not yet come. I felt very puzzled. Then they opened the book. I saw names written all over the top of the book, and they said, Here is the list for today, and your name is not here. Then he turned the book back many pages and said, This is your time, and they pointed to my name. I told them, I want to stay. They replied, You have to go back. You are part of God's plan. I asked, Why do I have to go back, and how will you send me back? They said, We will take you to God. He knows what to do. They took me to another place. Here I met God. He was sitting very high up. I saw that he was wearing a white robe. God held out his hands to me as if he were picking up a little child. He told me to sit down in front of him. His hands were very strong, yet they were the warmest hands. I slowly looked up at him. He was very tall. His hair and beard were white and I could hardly breathe. God put his hand on my head. He could see everything about me. He could see the good and bad things I had done, and he could experience what I was really feeling at that moment. He said, Yes, you are good. He went on to say that you were part of my plan. He showed me a picture of a much more mature me with a boy in tow. I understood that the boy was my son. I was in a wheelchair and the boy was pushing me because my neck had been broken in the accident. This meant that I was paralyzed and my son had to take care of me. I asked, Where is the boy's father? Is he dead? God said, He went to another place. Later, I did get married. At the age of 25, I had a son with my first husband. When my son was 2 years old, we got divorced. He left us and went to live in another city and never came back. Then God told me, You can choose to stay, but I want you to go back. I asked, What did you mean when you said I was part of your plan? Then he told me about the mission. If I stayed there, God would have to change the other events associated with it to make his plan work. I told God, If this is part of your plan, I will choose to go back for you. But if I go back, can you heal my neck? Not for me, but for my son, so he wouldn't have to take care of me. It's bad enough that his father is gone. God agreed. He told me that if I chose to go back, some of the memories I had here would not be preserved. So many of my experiences were erased from my memory. God smiled at me and said softly, It's time to go back. I followed God through the gates of heaven and into the universe. Words cannot describe this scene. We traveled between the galaxies. It was as if I was immersed in the universe, no longer bound by time and space. As we approached the Earth, I saw it becoming clearer and clearer. I could see large areas of land and oceans. When we finally reached the Earth's atmosphere, I felt a powerful surge of heat. We passed through the clouds and approached the Earth's surface. I knew that I was about to return to my home and start a new life. It was almost an instant compared to the journey to heaven with the angels. God was about to leave when I realized that he had not fixed my neck. I said, Wait. What about the wound on my neck? Then God put his hand on the back of my neck. Everything was back in place. I felt the warmth of the hand. God was getting ready to leave and I noticed that my neck still hadn't fully recovered. I said, I still feel something wrong with my neck. God said, This scar is to remind you at all times. The consequences need to be borne by yourself, and then God went back to heaven. I opened my eyes, saw the sunlight, and I took a deep breath. Life came back into my body. My friends saw me awake and one of them asked, "Are you okay? We thought you were dead." I had wounds in many places on my body, most importantly my neck, and I felt a lot of pain. They helped me up and my motorcycle was almost scrapped. Soon the ambulance came and I was taken to the hospital. The doctors asked me some questions, some I answered and some I couldn't. They called my parents and they arrived at the hospital soon after. The examination didn't reveal anything too serious. And after a brief treatment of the wound, we went home. When I returned to the real world, I found that my ability to think was greatly enhanced. I started to re-examine my life and think about the meaning of my living. I realized that life is short and we should all cherish our time and do what we love to do. After that experience, I became more brave and determined. I started to pursue my dreams more actively. I also understood what is the real value, which is to help others and create more value. As a result, I became more concerned about the people around me, their needs, and offered my help. I also started to pay attention to social issues and look for ways that I can contribute to society. I know that even small gestures can have a positive impact. This near-death experience has had a profound impact on my life. I hope I can turn this insight into practical action and make my life more meaningful.
When I was 22 years old, I went through a painful period because my wisdom teeth became inflamed. This was not the first time this had happened, but this time the pain was unbearable. I had to go to the doctor. He examined my teeth and told me that this situation could last for a while unless I decided to make a decision to have all my wisdom teeth extracted. The doctor explained to me that because my wisdom teeth were growing in an abnormal direction, it was causing the crowding and inflammation of my teeth. He told me that if I didn't have all my wisdom teeth removed, the pain would probably continue forever. After listening to the doctor's advice, I made the difficult decision to have all my wisdom teeth removed. The day of the surgery, I felt very nervous. As I lay in the chair, the anesthesiologist looked even more nervous than I was. I wasn't sure if he was the new doctor. He said to me, "Don't be nervous." I smiled and nodded my head, thanking him for his reassurance. As the surgery began, I felt my body become heavier and heavier. I gradually lost consciousness. In that moment, I felt my soul leave my body, like a butterfly floating over the operating room. I began to see everything in the operating room, as if I had become a bystander. I saw the doctors and nurses wearing gloves and masks as they manipulated my teeth with specialized tools. I could hear the doctors and nurses talking. I did not feel pain or discomfort. Instead, I felt a sense of peace and relief, as if my soul was flying in an open sky. Suddenly, I saw that the doctors became flustered, and their expressions and movements looked very eager. Two other doctors hurried into the operating room and began to perform CPR on me. They pressed hard on my chest, trying to restore my breathing and heartbeat. My body continued to tremble in their hands. I grumbled next to them, "Can't you be more gentle? Use so much force." I realized the seriousness of the situation. I began to feel fearful and uneasy because I knew I might be dead. I knew there was nothing I could do now. My soul began to move uncontrollably and started to move upward as I passed through the ceiling of the operating room. Then it left the hospital. A blinding light appeared ahead of me and I knew I had to follow it. I saw a very large angel come out of the light. He was even more enormous than I had imagined an angel to be. The feeling of oppression made me feel a little scared. The angel seemed to know my fears and he reassured me. "Don't worry, it's safe here and no one will hurt you." My communication with the angel transcended the boundaries of language, and we could understand each other's thoughts accurately through telepathy. This type of communication felt very natural to me and was more pure than verbal communication on Earth. There is no misunderstanding either. I thought, maybe this is the real way of communication. When the angel asked me if I wanted to move on, I answered yes, without hesitation. At this moment, I felt like a child who was going home to his real home. My heart was filled with anticipation. The angel smiled and told me in a soft voice that we were going to a beautiful and mysterious place. The angel then led me through a long tunnel. We were going very fast. I felt that my body was no longer bound by gravity. Sometimes, I would close my eyes because the change in speed scared me. We finally went through that tunnel and came to a beautiful garden. There were all kinds of flowers inside the garden, each one emitting a strong fragrance. The angel told me that this was heaven, the eternal home. I felt very excited because I had never seen such a beautiful place. The angel took me to a high place where I could look down on the whole heaven. I saw a huge city. The whole city was covered with light and was very spectacular. The city was surrounded by a vast grassland with all kinds of flowers and plants. In the distance was a huge forest. I felt very peaceful. The angel told me that only very pure souls can reach this place. I was immersed in this wonderful world and enjoyed the pleasure it brought me. My soul had been truly liberated, free from any worries and bondage. Here, I no longer need to worry about any problems or difficulties, but just enjoy the beauty and freedom of life. Time seems to have no more concept in this world, and my mood has become very relaxed and pleasant. In the center of the city, there is a tall throne. I knew that I had finally returned to my true home where I belonged. I looked at the angel beside me and thanked him for leading me here. I saw a very dazzling light. I was drawn toward that light. As I got closer, I saw a very tall, human-shaped light. I knew that this was God. God looked very friendly and he smiled at me. To my surprise, I found that I could understand his words, just as I had done when communicating with the angels earlier. He said, "Welcome home, my child." I was surrounded by the warmth and love of God. We reviewed the course of my life together, and I felt overwhelmed with shame and regret. But God didn't rebuke me. He said to me, "Don't be afraid, those things are behind you." God and I had a long conversation there. Talked about my work and my life. We also talked about global warming. God told me that global warming would pose a huge challenge to mankind. Although mankind is actively looking for solutions, they are not very effective. I agree with God because I am an environmentalist myself. I have been trying to contribute my share to environmental protection. The consequences of global warming are multifaceted, and they have a significant impact on the Earth's ecosystem and human society. First, global warming is causing sea level rise, which is caused by melting glaciers and expanding seawater. This phenomenon has led to greater risk to coastal cities and islands, with many areas of low-lying land and cities being inundated. Shoreline erosion has increased, coral reef ecosystems have been damaged, and the ecological balance has been disrupted. In the Maldives, located in the Indian Ocean, a rise in sea level would cause the entire country to disappear off the face of the earth. Likewise, Tuvalu, a small island nation in the Pacific Ocean, will face the same fate. In addition, coastal cities are under greater threat, such as Venice in Italy, where Venice on the water will disappear. There will be hundreds of millions more refugees worldwide. Second, global warming has increased the frequency and severity of natural disasters. These include droughts, floods, hurricanes, and torrential rains. These disasters have led to human casualties and reduced food production, causing a great impact on human society and economy. In addition, climate change threatens biodiversity, which has a catastrophic impact on the Earth's ecosystem. Many animals and plants are in danger of extinction, leading to massive collapse of ecosystems and disruption of ecological balance. Finally, global warming will also lead to food and water shortages, which has implications for global food supply and population stability. Many regions will face drought, causing food prices to skyrocket. After listening to God's explanation, I felt very pessimistic and desperate. I couldn't imagine how great the suffering and loss that mankind would endure when the disaster brought by global warming really came. So I decided to ask God, if it really happens, will you help mankind? God listened to my question, remained silent for a while, and then replied, "It's all your human choices, and there is nothing I can do to help you." Hearing this, I felt lost. I originally thought God would give us some help and support, but now I understand that humans need to face and solve this problem by themselves. God saw my loss and despair, and He reassured me that this was not the worst time, and that mankind still had a chance to save itself. God told me that if mankind could unite and take effective measures, it would be possible to avoid the worst outcome. These measures include reducing greenhouse gas emissions, protecting the environment and changing lifestyles. Every person can contribute to this problem. God says that although humans may sometimes feel small, a small act by one person can have a ripple effect. This process of self-redeeming is everyone's responsibility. Everyone can reduce the number of times they drive and walk or ride a bike instead of driving. This will not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also improve physical health. After I listened to God's words, I knew that mankind still has a chance to save the earth. I expressed my gratitude to God. God told me that it was time to go back and that I needed to get this message out to more people so that more people would know how they should act. The angel next to me came up and told me not to worry. He would take me back. We went back through that long tunnel very fast. At times I even felt a little scared, but the angel stayed by my side and made me feel at ease. Finally, we went through the last tunnel and returned to the hospital room. When I opened my eyes, I felt very confused because I found myself lying in a hospital bed. There were many doctors and nurses busy around me. I tried to sit up, but my body was very weak. I didn't know what was happening. The doctor told me that I had used too much anesthetic. It caused me to go into cardiac arrest. Fortunately, the paramedics found and resuscitated me in time. Now, I have regained consciousness, but need further treatment and observation. When I heard the news, I couldn't imagine that I almost lost my life due to medical errors. At the same time, I did not blame the anesthesiologist too much. I knew it was not his intention and that he might have just been negligent for a moment. At that time, I also did not think that this medical error would bring me a chance to meet with God. After I left the hospital, I began to actively seek out an environmental charity organization. I hope to become a volunteer for them and make a small contribution to the protection of the earth. Finally, I found an organization and became one of their volunteers. I participated in various environmental activities with them. Now, I have become one of the oldest members of this organization and have been volunteering for 11 years. I have always believed in God's word that even a small act by one person can have a ripple effect and affect more people. Each person can contribute to this issue. We need to unite and take effective measures. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions, change lifestyles, and do our part for the planet.